Hello and welcome to KellyApy, a self-help podcast. Well, today's episode is about postpartum psychosis. After having a baby, it should be the happiest time of a mother's life. However, this isn't always the case. So if you're like me, you just assume that the baby blues are a natural part of a process a woman goes through after having a child. This is many times the case, but sometimes a deeper disturbance may be at play. Sometimes it might not be a chemical imbalance at all, but instead there may be a mental illness at play, such as the case with postpartum psychosis. This is a mental illness emergency that can occur anywhere from the first 2 hours after giving birth to the first few weeks. My friend Stephaie confided in me a while ago that she had suffered from this after the birth of her last child. This is an extremely hard topic to relive, but she has agreed to sit down today to talk about it in the hopes that her story can bring light to anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation. Please welcome to the show, Stephaie. Welcome, Stephaie. We're so glad you could be here today on KellyApy again. She's a recurring guest. You might remember her from her Tapping with Stephaie episode. And if you didn't check it out after this interview, because you're not going to want to miss it.
I'm happy to be a recurring character.
He's like the wacky neighbor that keeps coming back.
That's right. Can't get rid of me. I'm always looking through the window.
Well, Steph and I have been friends for a really long time. We go back to the days of Nickelodeon, hosting shows at Nickelodeon together. And I was at her wedding, and I pretty much, I almost killed her dog when I was watching the dog Iggy. She never let me watch her dog again. But we go back. We have a big, long history of our friendship. And I had no idea at all when I went to California this past summer, and I met up with Stephaie, and we started talking. And she shared with me that she had gone through this major thing in her life. And I had no idea. And I was like, Stephaie, would you be willing to share this with my audience? And it's a tough thing to talk about. It really is. And she's agreed to do it today and share her story about the hell that she went through after the birth of her third child. It didn't happen with the other two. Did it, Steph? Or did you have any sort of signs of it happening with those two?
Not like this.
Okay.
Not like this. Well, we can get to that, but but no, this was an isolated occurrence. So
why don't you just go ahead and tell the story then, if you feel comfortable.
Sure. So I have 3 children, and the topic that we're discussing today is postpartum psychosis, which is the rarest of the perinatal mood and anxiety disorders. The acronym for that is PMADS, and PMADS, the most well-known PMAD is postpartum depression. Like, the wonderful thing is that in the time that we're living in, most people have now heard of postpartum depression. But what most are not aware of is that there are actually, there's a spectrum of disorders, including postpartum depression, postpartum anxiety, postpartum OCD, postpartum PTSD, postpartum bipolar mood disorders, and postpartum psychosis. Psychosis is rare. It literally affects 1 to 2 women out of every 1,000 births. So it does not happen very often. In my case, I had most definitely had, in retrospect, postpartum depression after my first 2 births. But I really wasn't adequately screened. I never sought treatment for it. I kind of muddled through. But with my third baby, this experience was like, I had not ever had this before.
Can I just ask you, because we were talking about this, since we're talking about this, the postpartum depression is what we kind of know as the baby blues. Is that right? Or is that something totally...
No, the baby blues are actually extremely common. It's an extremely common phenomenon. So the baby blues affect up to 80% of new moms. And it's that period after the birth where, like, when a woman is pregnant, her hormones are at an all-time high. And when that baby's born, it's like, it's the steepest hormone plunge of her life because she's not pregnant anymore. So there's kind of a normal settling of the hormones. And there's also all the new mom stuff, the inadequate sleep and, just the shock. It can be a real shock to the system having a baby. It's like, oh my God,
absolutely. Yeah.
What do I do? So, but the baby blues go away on their own. So that they're separate from PMADs. So it's a situation when, if a woman has the baby blues and then it gets to be week 3, week 4, and she's just got this depression that's set in and she's just having a hard time functioning. That's when it's like, this is transitioned into something else. But, that's kind of my layperson's understanding of the differentiation.
Okay, that's great. Now I want to kind of throw it out there because I know, like, if I were a new mom, I'd be listening. I'm like, ooh, I'm feeling, because I had the baby blues. Yeah, like you said, every mom has it, but there's a point where it's not the baby blues. It's a whole different spectrum of possible mental disorders happening with the mother.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I want to stress right at the top of this interview that this is not the mother's fault.
Absolutely.
None of this is the mother's fault. And the thing that's a real kicker about it with any of the PMADs is that so many women really look forward to this experience of having this baby. And it's just it's so horrible when something happens and you are deposited in this awful place and you just can't enjoy the baby, or sometimes you're just in such a horrible place. You're like, I wish that I could go back and not have this baby, all of those thoughts are completely normal, and it's just a real kicker that it happens, but it's not the mother's fault.
And it's like, Stephanie, if it could happen to you, I mean, seriously, it could happen to anybody.
Absolutely. Right? I mean, there's no, it's not limited by culture, race, ethnicity, socioeconomic background. It's if you're pregnant one day and you're not pregnant the next, it's like it can happen. And there are factors. If you've had a history of anxiety or depression or previous mental health struggles, if you have economic insecurity, if you are not in a good relationship, if you have inadequate support, so many things can go into the stew that can set a woman up for having difficulty.
Oh, wow. I mean, what was it that brought you to like the point of, oh my gosh, I need to get help. I'm really in a bad place here.
Well, before I answer that question, I just want to throw some more stuff in there, just because if anybody's listening, there are some symptoms of postpartum psychosis.
Okay.
And they are delusions or strange beliefs. And I got this from a wonderful organization called Postpartum Support International. I'll give their web address at the end. They are a fantastic resource. They are an international organization, and you can get great data and also support from them. But according to their site, it's delusions or strange beliefs, hallucinations, that's seeing or hearing things that aren't there, feeling very irritated, hyperactivity, a decreased need for or inability to sleep, paranoia or suspiciousness, rapid mood swings, and difficulty communicating at times. The other thing that makes postpartum psychosis dangerous is it's the PMAD where there can be a risk of suicide and infanticide. There's a 5% suicide rate and a 4% infanticide rate. That doesn't mean that every woman is going to do harm to herself or her baby, but when a woman is in a delusional state, this is the reality. She's believing that for whatever reason, whatever's prompting her to take this action, that it makes total sense. So I just want to preface what happened to me.
So it's like those stories those god awful stories you hear of these mothers that
my heart breaks. It's like when I hear everything that happened with Andrea Yates. She's probably the highest profile one.
Yeah.
But I cannot imagine what it would be like for a woman to have gone through infanticide, and then her mood stabilizes and she realizes, I cannot imagine what that would be like.
Yeah.
But for me, and I just wanted to get that out of the way because I think it's important information to educate people about. But I was between 3 and 5 weeks postpartum when I began to feel that something was off. For me, I was angry, and it was just like this righteous anger. I was furious, and I was furious with my husband. I just was so angry at him. And I remember, I was an active journaler, and I remember like, I would start to go off into these fantasies in my head about, the whole concept of having a karmic debt to pay, like for some reason, the concept of karma and what is a karmic debt. And I would be talking, and my mom was staying with me and to help with the baby. And at points she would say, "What are you talking about?" And it's so sad. I've looked at my journal from that time, and I can see that I'm slipping, and I'm trying so hard to hold on to reality. But I just remember thinking that, oh my God, like a part of me was waking up, and I started seeing hidden meaning in things. Like I started feeling like I could predict things before they would happen. And then I began to feel like the Holy Spirit was talking to me. Like I was literally getting these divine downloads. And so there was kind of a sense of exhilaration of, oh my God, I'm psychic, the Holy Spirit's talking to me. And I never had hallucinations. I didn't see stuff that wasn't there, but I was going more and more in this direction of feeling that I had special powers, and which is not unusual, like having religious, I don't know what the term is, but there being a religious aspect, like God is talking to you is a pretty classic symptom. And then this thing kicked in. I've been a people pleaser my whole life. It's like, I'm on a mission to tell the truth. I am going to tell it like it is. And I remember I was like I have felt inhibited my whole life about being straight with people. And there was one, I'd had a C-section. It was my first one. And that was, when I look back in time, it's like, oh my God, so many things happened that were just really made things more difficult. And I don't know why I'd gone to the OB, but there was some bookkeeping error. It was not a big deal. I was irate. And I accused the bookkeeper of being a fraud. And I said, I'm going to go out to your waiting room, and I'm going to let these women know it was just, and my husband stopped me. One of the nurses stopped me, and they were like,
"What's this sales tax that you're trying to charge me?"
It was just completely, me, right?
Yeah. And to see you do that, it's totally un-Stephaie.
Oh my God. And then there are certain things I remember. And another time, I had, because I was functioning, like I was kind of unraveling, but still kind of functioning. And I'd gone someplace in the car, and I don't know why I was out, but I got lost in my neighborhood. Like I was maybe a mile from home, and I couldn't figure out where I was. And I thought, I need to call Father Albert. He was the pastor of my church. I'm like, I was so involved in this community. I was like, oh my God, on the pastoral council, a lector. I'm like a pillar in this community. And so, of course, when someone like me calls the rectory and says they need to speak to Father Albert, you get put through. And I just remember saying to him, the Holy Spirit is talking to me.
Oh my gosh. What did Father Albert do? Was he
oh my God. He said, I believe you. I believe you. He goes, where are you? And I said, I'm lost. And I don't remember how I got home, but oh my God, like.
Did Father Albert suspect that something was going on at this point?
I think that he did. And I can talk more about him in a minute, but because he did something that was just so amazing, but for me, but it got to the point where, I had previously been taking medicine for depression, and I had gone off of it during the pregnancy. And so by the time we got in touch with my doctor and everything, it's like the train had left the building. And he told David, you've got to take her to a hospital, because it was just getting more and more and more, like I was having more episodes of like, the Holy Spirit's talking to me, and there's a karmic debt. And for it just, I'd watched Haunted Mansion with my youngest too. And I remember like thinking, this is the key to the universe. This is the,
Mansion. Is that with the Eddie Murphy?
Yes. And there was this scene at the end. There was a scene at the end where, I can't even remember the scene now, but like, I think his wife has died and she's come back. And I remember being on my feet going, this is what I'm talking about. And my family is looking at me going, oh my God, and I was gone. And so I ended up getting checked into the psychiatric wing of a hospital. And oh my God, it was really, really hard. And I want to say that postpartum psychosis is a true medical emergency. Like there is no other option. You have to seek medical treatment, because if a woman gets delusional and starts having thoughts of infanticide or suicide, you cannot mess around with that. So in no way, shape, or form do I want to say that was not the appropriate action. But what was difficult was they were not prepared for a new mom. Like I was a nursing mother, and a breast pump had to be requisitioned, and it took hours and hours and hours, and I was in agony. And then the breast pump got returned. It's like, what the heck, So it had to be requisitioned again, and just stuff like I was not. There was nobody else like me there, and it was just a kind of a traumatic experience, but
because it's so rare, right? And they weren't expecting to have a mother coming in with a psychotic episode happening.
No. And what they did was there were like 2 levels to this place, and they put me in with like the real extreme, and I just, there are so many more. This was at the end of 2009. And it's like, there are so many more. There's so much more that's known now about how to care for women. And there are facilities that are geared towards helping postpartum women that are experiencing that, an episode, and not just postpartum psychosis, but, any of the PMADs that have gone to an extreme and she just can't care for herself. It's like, there's so much more that's known now, and there's so much more compassionate care out there. But, I did not get to see my baby. And, the one thing in there, it's like they hit me with all these drugs. And, the one thing that I did was I kept pumping, even though, it was like, it was a road to nowhere with the pumping. The milk was not going to my son because of all these meds, but it was like the one thing I could hold on to that I could do for him. And
your connection, your one little connection.
Yeah, because I honestly thought that I was never going to get to go home. I really thought that, when the medicine did its job, and I kind of was like, oh, and I was balanced out again. I thought that I'd lost everything.
Oh, Steph.
I thought feeling. Oh my God, I thought I was not a fit mother.
Oh gosh.
I thought it would be better if my husband divorced me and found a woman who could be a better mother to my children. And just the idea that I couldn't be the mother that I wanted to be.
Yeah.
I just thought, what's the point?
Steph, gosh, it makes perfect sense that you would be feeling that way, and I can't imagine the trauma that you must have been feeling at that point, feeling and you're just not knowing really what the hell's going on here, right?
No, and being in a vulnerable place where it's like, when I kind of was realizing, oh my God, I am where I am, it was like, it just was like, like my husband and my mom would come visit me. And at one point I was like, you got to get me out of here. I'm like, I was terrified of being in that place.
Yeah.
I was terrified of being in that place. And the thing that's a kicker about it is this particular place I was at, they were known at the time for being so great for birthing there, because they were all about mother baby attachment and stuff. And I'm like, well, go visit the other side of the hospital.
Side they don't talk about.
Oh my God. And I would ask, I'm like, I want to see my baby. And like this one nurse, she would say, maybe tomorrow. And like, it wasn't going to happen. It was
what happened. So what ended up happening? How did it?
One funny thing I'll tell you really quick is that I was there. I was there over Halloween. And I remember sitting there thinking, like, the lady that did music therapy came upstairs and I'm watching all these people dance around with instruments. And I'm thinking the healthy part of me is like, damn, I got to remember this.
This is gold.
This is material. Anyway, side note. I think I was there about a week. I'm not really sure. And I still don't know the date range that I was there. I'm sure I could find out, but I just don't want to know.
Yeah.
But eventually, my husband was like, I want to get her out of here. And that was a big deal because they were like, oh, no, she's not ready to go yet. But he did whatever he had to do and he walked me out. But I mean, I walked out of that place and I felt like I had transparent skin. It's like everything was so like, I was so sensitive, and it took a very long time to heal. And, it was medicine and it was therapy and, and then the kicker was that once, my mood had stabilized, it's like, then this really awful postpartum depression kicked in.
Oh.
So I want to say it took me about 6 or 7 months. And, until I finally, and in the middle of all of this, as you know, I'm a tapper, but that's when I discovered tapping, because I was doing sessions with this therapist, and he was not a great therapist, but he was somebody to talk to. And I was like, I just wish there was something I could do to feel better. And he said, well, I heard about this thing called tapping. And I'm like, what is it? And he explained, and, it was like, if you've done acupuncture, I'm like, I have. And he explained it and something went bing. And I went home and I found a manual and I downloaded it. And honestly, I credit tapping with really, it gave me power. It gave me something I could do to help myself. But I want to say it probably took about a year before I felt strong again, and there were a whole bunch of life circumstances that happened, but we don't need to go into that, but it's just, there was all sorts of other things happening. And, so there was a lot that was going on that I also had to navigate.
And during this time is, the baby, are you able to like be with the baby, or how?
Yeah. Like once I got home from the hospital, that was probably one of the hardest things, is that, being away from him for a week. And my mom had started caring for him. So he was in the room with her. And I just felt like I completely fell out of the rhythm with him. That it's kind of like this symbiotic bond that you feel with that baby, and I got home and I thought, he doesn't like me. He doesn't like me. I mean, I was not well. An infant wouldn't go, oh, lady, you're a basket case. I can't stand you. Give me the other one. But in my mind, it was like, no, and it just, I think that was the most heartbreaking thing, was that I had to repair my relationship with him, and I eventually did. And oh my God, we are thick as thieves.
Oh, I know. You should see this lady's Facebook page.
He's my little buddy. I mean, he's just such an, I call him my earth angel. He's just, and it's so funny because my older two look just like their dad, but this one, he's all mine. And he looks like my side of the family, and there's just so many things about him. And it's just like,
yeah,
but,
inseparable.
Yeah. So anyway, yeah, it was really, really, really awful. And the kicker is, Kelly, that in retrospect, it's like, I think a lot of it could have been avoided. Like if I had just had, if I'd been able to self-report sooner, but also if I'd been able to self-report to someone who knew about PMADs, and this is the kicker. It's like there's a field called reproductive psychiatry, which is, it focuses on, there's a specialization in women in the reproductive years, from the time a young woman gets her period through menopause, and childbearing falls into that, but it is not, there is no board certification in reproductive psychiatry. Somebody becomes a reproductive psychiatrist because they take it upon themselves to do so.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
like, I remember after having my son, it seemed like every appointment they would be asking me questions. Are you, screening me? So were they not screening you when you were going in for your appointments with the baby?
Well, like for instance, I don't remember being screened at all after I had my first baby. She was a NICU baby. So I left, and again, it's like I look at the sum total of what happened with the third one, and there were so many. It's like the deck was all loaded up. Like I had so many risk factors that just, I think, pushed me over the edge. And I had a NICU baby. She was in the NICU about 3 weeks, and after a very long, arduous birth, and so, but I was not screened at the hospital, and nobody at the hospital even said, "Hey, mom, you might have a hard time."
Yeah.
But I had her back in 2000, so it was like, again, here we sit now, and there's way more understanding and resources and stuff. But with my middle one, I went for my postpartum visit, and the nurse came in and she goes, oh, you can't leave before you fill this out. And she tossed a clipboard on the exam table, and it was like, like a survey, check the boxes.
Yeah.
And it just kind of pissed me off. And I'm like,
And they didn't really check. Yeah. They just kind of like, oh, we got to get this done. And they didn't really look at it. Yeah.
No,
gotcha.
No. And with honestly, with number 3, I don't remember. I honestly don't remember. I think because of what I went through, I'm sure there was a screening in there someplace, but at my OB, but I don't remember.
So Steph, the beautiful part of this story is, and there is some beauty to be gained, is that it led you to this whole tragedy led you to your new life's work that you really want to do. So talk a little bit about that. You kind of mentioned it a little bit, how it introduced you to tapping.
Well, yeah. At that time, really the only resources available were medicine and talk therapy. And so much more is known now. I think there's more recognition for somatic therapies as healing modalities. That's, specifically dealing with how things are stored in the body. Back in, 2009, early 2010, it's like emotional freedom techniques, tapping, was not a very well-known modality at all, but it specifically involves using fingertips to tap on meridian endpoints that correspond to meridian endpoints in the Chinese medicine system. So if you've ever gone for acupuncture, it's the same. Yep. It's the same map essentially of the body. And the idea is what they've discovered, and they can't completely explain it, but for whatever reason, when you tap on these points, it sends a message of safety to the central nervous system. So it calms things down, and it allows things to clear. And what it gave me, and I remember thinking, this is nuts. If they think I'm nuts before, they're going to think I'm nuts now. I would go in the bathroom, and I printed out this manual, and I taught myself the basic, setup of it. And, but I remember one day I woke up and I just started doing it every day. I'm like, I'll do anything. I just want to feel better. And I remember this one day I woke up and it's like the sun was shining through the window, and I thought, oh, it's pretty. And I burst into tears. 2 things. One, it was the first time I had just a spontaneous moment of recognizing that something was beautiful. And two, it was the first time that I'd been able to cry.
It was a breakthrough moment.
It really was. And I think that it gave me power. It gave me something it gave me control. It gave me something I could do for myself. And that's why I feel so passionate about helping people. You know, I think that there are so many people, not just with PMATs, but with trauma in general, because it was very traumatic, you know. But when you go through stuff, there can be such a sense of disempowerment, and so many people walking around thinking, okay, this is just the way my life is. I have to manage these symptoms. And it's like, the reality is, you know, the more attention we can give to these modalities that really work with the body, and the way that, you know, trauma is stored in the body, you know, what a gift to give to others. Because if stuff can clear and people can regain a sense of calm and peace, oh my God, you can totally have another chance at creating a life that you want, you know. And that's why, you know, I tapped for a long time, and, you know, I've done a whole bunch of other stuff. And I'm not currently working as a clinical EFT practitioner full time, not yet. But it was funny, a few years back, it was like I was doing my meditation one night, and all of a sudden, like literally this pestering little voice, EFT, kept coming into my head. I'm like, oh my God, what is this? And so I finally Googled it, and lo and behold, it's like, oh my God, there's resources and trainings. And I found the site for EFT Universe, which is the organization that I pursued certification through over a 2-year period of time, and a certification in clinical EFT, which is an evidence-based approach. So there's now, you know, scholarly studies that have been done on the efficacy, you know, particularly around PTSD. So anyway, in a way, it was sort of like, okay, the universe was coming back around and saying, you know, we're not done with you. You've got some work to do. So yeah, it's really cool. And
yeah, it's like the kind of thing with an alcoholic, you know, is that you have to go through literal hell. And once you find the other side of it, you can, you know, see, okay, I can help some other people out. I can put my hand out there to those people trapped.
That's
and
right.
pull them up out of the pits of darkness that they find themselves in.
That's right. And I think it's important to remember too, and you would know this, you're never done.
No.
You know, I do stuff every day. I have, in all humility, you know, having this history now that I do, you know, it's like there's a lot that I do to really take the best care of myself that I can. And I'm not without struggles, you know. I have the nervous system I do, I have the history that I do, but I'm choosing not to be labeled by that, but I choose to respect it. And, you know, it's a daily ongoing process.
Yeah. Stephs, we're running out of time here, and I hate that. She is a recurring guest, people. So
character. I'm a character. Recurring character.
She's a recurring character.
That's right.
But if somebody thinks that somebody they love, or they want to find more about this, go ahead and tell them what they need to do.
I will. I want to share just a few things really quick.
Yes.
About postpartum. First of all, again, this is from Postpartum Support International. Mood disorders are the #1 complication in pregnancy and postpartum. 1 in 7 moms suffers from postpartum depression in pregnancy and postpartum, and it can ramp up in pregnancy. And 1 in 10 dads can suffer from postpartum depression.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. Well, it's situational, you know, and obviously the man has not given birth, but there are other factors. So it's way more prevalent and common than people realize. So, but anyway, Postpartum Support International is like, they're the main stakeholder organization for PMADs. And you can find them at postpartum, all one word. So postpartum.net. There are fantastic resources on there. There's a warm line, so you can call anywhere in the world. If you're having a hard time, or if you know somebody who's having a hard time, you can call. There are PSI coordinators in all communities everywhere, so they can directly connect you with help and support in your community. And there's just no need to suffer. It's not something that you've done. You are not a failure. You're not a bad mom. You are not a bad mom or a bad human because you're having a hard time. So, yeah.
Stephanie, you're so wonderful. I know this was a hard one for you, and so it really means a lot. And I'm sure it's going to help a lot of women out there and men who really are trying to figure this out.
Mm-hmm.
So as you mentioned, anybody going through this is feeling pretty hopeless and pretty down right now. So I'd like to have you give them a message of hope to help and heal them. What's your message of hope to help and heal them today?
Well, I certainly didn't have this perspective then, but looking back on it now, it was cataclysmic, and I'm not mincing words. I was broken on all levels. Like, I was leveled as a human being. I really was. But it became a catalyst for me. So from cataclysmic to catalyst, like, I learned how to really respect how to care for myself. And I know I am who I am today. And I'm drawn to do the things that I want to do because of that experience. So, there's that old saying, where there's life, there's hope, and it's true. And I know if I can do it, other women can too.
Wow, Steph, that's beautiful. I love your messages of hope. I'm going to end with a quote that I found here, because I like to end with an inspirational quote. And this one comes from an author named Matt Haig, and he states, "Mental health problems don't define who you are. They are something you experience. You walk in the rain and you feel the rain. But importantly, you are not the rain." And Steph, you're definitely not the rain. You're the sunshine today, lighting the way for these people and need help. So I'm so glad you could take the time to be with us. Thanks for joining us, Steph.
I'm so happy that I got to talk about this. I really am. It's hard, but it's what I need to do. So thank you.
And Steph, if somebody wanted to find out more about, really quick, 2 plugs I want to end with. A plug for, again, the website for postpartum, and then tapping, if they wanted to find out more about tapping. So just real quick, if you could just give me a couple quick plugs for people if they want to look these things up.
Yeah, again, so the group is Postpartum Support International. And there are many other phenomenal groups, but they do have a global presence. So that website is postpartum.net. So postpartum.net. Fantastic resources there. If you want to, you can Google tapping. EFT Universe is where I got my certification. If anybody has specific questions, and I would even say this too, if there are any women out there suffering who hear this, I'm happy to be contacted, and you can reach me at tappingwithstephanie@gmail.com. And that's Stephanie, STEPHANIE. So.
Wonderful. All right. Thanks, Steph. And look forward to seeing you on future episodes.
Me too. Thank you.
And thank you, my listeners, for tuning in today. If you enjoyed this podcast, subscribe to our podcast. We're going to be doing this for half an hour each week. If you'd like more positive messages, check out our YouTube blog, Monday Messages, hosted by Kelly Mahoney. Have a great week, and we'll see you next week for another edition of KellyApy.